Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Friday night live stream for Week 18 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of today's live stream, we're answering any and all fantasy football related questions going into this week, and of course, the upcoming matchups on Saturday and Sunday. If you guys have any questions, make sure you type it in the live chat. Whether you do play in a standard, half PPR, or full PPR scoring format, be sure to include that within the question so that I have the context as to what we are kind of approaching in regards to your league in specific. Outside of that, again, over the course of this week, Monday we talked about waiver wire, Tuesday running backs, Wednesday wide receivers, Thursday, yesterday we talked about quarterbacks, and of course to close out the week, we have Friday talking about tight end rankings. Now, again, do not forget tomorrow and on Sunday, I will be live streaming prior to the beginning of these games. So like I do every single weekend, I will still be here live tomorrow, Saturday at noon PST. And of course, on Sunday morning around 8:30 a.m., I will be live here on the channel with up-to-date rankings at all variety of positions. Now, of course, as we approach week 18, these are my top 16 tight end rankings going into the given week in a half PPR scoring format. So again, if you do have the likes of someone like Zach Ertz and or Kyle Pitts, you know who to play as they are ranked by position and of course by tier overall. Now, earlier today, we did get more and more information regarding the potential of players potentially missing this week. We did get confirmations in regards to the following players. Again, there's a long list of players, so I'll go ahead and reiterate the top to bottom in terms of offensive players that are going to be missing and have been designated either doubtful or again out thus far this week. Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Tyjae Spears, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams, Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Derek Carr, Kate Otten, Tyler Boyd, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Amir Abdullah, Deebo Samuel, Josh Palmer. That's so far. Again, there's probably going to be even more that are added to that list that are still questionable or quote-unquote game time decisions that we don't even know if they're going to actually be active going into this upcoming Sunday. But as we get closer to Saturday and, of course, Sunday's games, we're getting a clearer picture as to who is available for us to start within the given week. I hope you guys are doing well. Let's get into answering questions, shall we? All right, let's see here. Onage says, let's go, Andrew. I appreciate that, Onage. Thank you again. Jocelyn, what's up? Let's see here. The Dino says, I need one in a full PPR. Achane, McConkey, Kraft, tight end premium, or Zacchaeus. Okay, so this is going to be my primary suggestion. So in the event in which, for example, the Bengals were to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers tomorrow, Saturday afternoon, if the Bengals are to win that game, you play McConkey on Sunday. If that wasn't to take place, at that point, you would probably lean towards Achane there. You could go with Zacchaeus in order to hope for Omega upside against that Dallas Cowboys secondary that, again, is technically the best matchup at the wide receiver position over the course of the last 3 months here. So I don't mind that idea either. Ultimately, in a full PPR with Tua Tagovailoa out and the way that matchup is most likely going to go, I honestly probably tell you to play Zacchaeus there. I think there's just as much upside ultimately attached to it because without Tua, Achane really isn't himself, and that has been demonstrated on multiple occasions. It's not like that's going to change. Unless he makes that a huge run here for a touchdown, it's not really a great play. So again, it's going to be purely contingent on, first and foremost, if the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have to lose on Saturday in order for you to play McConkey on Sunday. Otherwise, you play Zacchaeus probably anyway there. Hey, Gabriel says, Andrew is my hidden gem. Thank you, Gabriel. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Grabba says, in a full PPR, flex one, Garendo, Keenan Allen, McMillan. Okay, great. I mean, look, as of right now in a full PPR, between those available options, I'd probably either go with Garendo or McMillan, considering there is going to be a pretty heavy, I would assume, opportunity share for Mike Evans there. There could be an argument in which McMillan maybe gets ignored, but based on how he's played recently, I'd probably go in the direction of McMillan in a full PPR. Thank you. Justin McMillan sends in a question, says half PPR. Am I overthinking, or is it stupid for me to think that Zacchaeus will do better than McLaurin again? I don't think it's a terrible thought. I mean, look, here's the thing. McLaurin has played incredibly well all season long. Sure, he's had a couple of these performances, specifically last week and in week 11 against the Eagles, in which he disappeared entirely. And that is something that very well could exist once again this week. But ultimately, I mean, am I banking on the idea that McLaurin's going to disappear again? Probably not, considering he has been consistent 80% of the time. Rather than the 20% of performances over the course of the last 10 weeks in which he's disappeared. So I'd continue to lean in the direction of playing McLaurin there. It's not to say that you can't start both, though. Both could certainly be of value within the upcoming performance. Absolutely. I expect them to both be, top 30 options there. D-Rod79 says, who should I start, Smith or Ertz? Yeah, as of right now, Considering Tua Tagovailoa is not going to be starting this week, again, that is confirmed as of earlier today, it is going to be Tyler Huntley. There could be an argument to be made as to going for Ertz rather than Jonnu Smith. I have them back-to-back ranked, as you can see on screen, as of right there. I could justify the idea of playing Ertz, but as of right now, I do prefer Jonnu Smith within the matchup against the New York Jets defense. Let's see here. Steve Nato says, I think Flacco will bounce back. I mean, look, Flacco was decent last week. Obviously, 3 turnovers is brutal. The first interception he threw was an incredible catch by that secondary member of the New York Giants. But ultimately, a bounce back performance per se. I mean, when you're taking on the Jaguars, who are a top tier matchup at the quarterback position, their secondary has struggled as mightily as they have. Earlier this season, Flacco did already take on the Jaguars in the absence of Anthony Richardson in that game. If I'm not mistaken, the Jaguars won like 37-34. It was a shootout, and Joe Flacco threw for 3 passing touchdowns, had an incredible game with Alec Pierce at the back end of that overall experience. So I expect Flacco to play, well to this week. So again, there's a reason why I have him ranked within my top 12, 13 quarterback rankings. I think he should be able to play well in the absence of Anthony Richardson once again. As for your question, it says Downs, Zay Flowers, or Blake Corum on waivers, full PPR. Okay, so there's multiple ways that we can go about this. I don't really feel comfortable playing Corum. I know that there's going to be some utilization of Matthew Stafford probably in that first quarter of that game. I don't know why that's the case. Earlier today, Sean McVay specifically said, we're not going to see Puka, Cooper Kupp, or Kyren. And 2 of the offensive linemen are going to be out. So I don't even expect for Matthew Stafford to run more than one series, if he even runs one at all. Maybe he's activated just as an emergency quarterback, just in case. We'll see. Either way, as of this week, I'm not really interested in Corum in comparison to the alternatives of Downs and Zay Flowers. Again, Downs really did let us down last week, unfortunately, because Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce were the primary number 1 or 2 options of the offense, even though all season long when Joe Flacco has been the starter, I mean, just undeniably, the opportunity share and the reception counts that Josh Downs was exposed to was a significantly higher number. I want to play Josh Downs there, but I think it is a little bit sketchier, so I'd probably suggest you play Flowers. Maddie sends in a question, says, Jones or Charbonnet as my running back in a full PPR? I'd play Aaron Jones there pretty comfortably. Again, last time out against the Detroit Lions, they ran through that defense like, a hot knife through butter, honestly. I could even rewind back to the week in which they took on the Minnesota Vikings took on the Detroit Lions. I remember specifically saying, I don't think that Aaron Jones is going to have the greatest game because that run stop defense is really good for the Detroit Lions. But over the course of the season, as it has persisted, they've continued to rack up injuries that has certainly made them exposable within that overall category. So I still do believe that Aaron Jones, as long as he's healthy, obviously coming off of the quad contusion, should be ready to go at a full capacity and be a better play than Charbonnet, in my opinion, in that circumstance. Says, I'm worried about Jones' injury. Yeah, listen, if Jones going into this week, again, is going to be at a limited capacity, again, we're not going to be privy to that information. If you wanted to just avoid it because of that potential nature, then I don't mind the idea of playing Charbonnet. I have them both ranked within my top 10 running backs anyway this week. One's at 8 and one's at 10. So again, there are 2 spots separating the 2. So if you feel more comfortable rolling with Charbonnet, by all means, go with your gut feeling on that. Paul Bowen sends in a question. Paul, what's up? Says Mims or Zaccheaus in my flex in a full PPR. I'd rather have Zaccheaus there, primarily because the target share of opportunity has been really solid over the course of the last 2 weeks. And what Mims desires and requires within the offense to find his upside of performance is a deep ball down the field. Again, there are going to be a couple shots every game in which it goes in his direction with that potential. But ultimately, when you're taking on the Chiefs without their primary guys, Mahomes, Kelsey, Pacheco, most likely going to be missing a couple of their offensive linemen. We already know that Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, all these kind of guys are being shut down within the game. I do expect this to be a one-sided affair to the extent to where it may end up being a potential in which Bo Nix is running out the clock in the second half because maybe Carson Wentz isn't able to structure an offense together in the first half. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe Carson Wentz puts together a legacy performance as he's trying to fight for a future job. That could certainly be within the realm of possibility. I prefer the Washington receiver there, Paul. Jocelyn Wilson says, in a full PPR, who would you rather have between Flowers and Jonnu Smith this week? I'd rather have Flowers, to be honest. Jonnu Smith has to score a touchdown to be relevant. In the absence of a touchdown, again, the target opportunity that he would have to be exposed to is significantly high in order to keep up with Flowers, in my opinion there. Justin McMillan had a follow-up, says, do you think Terry's ankle might be slowing him down? He got locked up. He got locked down last week. I mean, there's always a possibility that injuries could be a playing factor into the potential of a player, but we don't really know. We can assume that that's potentially the matter, or it's just a potential of where, again, when we look at last week, there's always the opportunity where Zach Ertz, Zacchaeus just found themselves open far quicker in those scenarios in which, again, why wouldn't a quarterback like Jaden Daniels look to the open receiver instead of force feed a singular guy? As to whether or not an injury is potentially plaguing him and making him a lesser option, again, it's certainly within the realm of possibility, but we're not going to be privy to exactly what the reasoning is. We can just speculate on the matter. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down, we had Joseph in the chat who says, pick one, Bo Nix or Justin Herbert. Okay, so this is going to be 100% contingent on the game between the Bengals and the Steelers. And let me tell you why. I mentioned this yesterday. I've mentioned it all week long. I'll go ahead and reiterate it just so you have a great scope on the matter. So going into this weekend, the Pittsburgh Steelers need to win in order to give themselves an opportunity of claiming the number 5 seed, in which they would then play the Houston Texans. In the event in which they were to lose to the Bengals, they would have a possibility in which if the Chargers were to beat the Raiders, which they evidently will, if the Bengals beat the Steelers and the Chargers beat the Raiders, the Chargers would then claim the number 5 spot and play against the Texans, while then, unfortunately, the Steelers would have to play against the Baltimore Ravens in the first round of the NFL playoffs in Baltimore. So the Steelers, the Ravens, and of course the Chargers are all going to be starting at a full capacity, assuming certain aspects take place. Specifically, because the Steelers play tomorrow, the result of that game, if the Steelers were to win, I would expect that the Chargers, because they would know at that point that they can get the number 5 seed in the AFC, they would probably pull their starters at the end of halftime, like as in Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, and Dobbins in preparation for week 19 in the NFL playoffs. So if and only if the Bengals win on Saturday, do you play Justin Herbert? Otherwise, you're playing Bo Nix on Sunday. Thank you. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding on the matter. Brian Thomas says, great info you give out. Can't wait for the player props. Thank you, Brian. Again, I'll go ahead and share some of the props that we went ahead and put together over the course of this week via Underdog in just a moment. Let me just catch up on some of these questions, and I'm more than happy to share those with you, Brian. Thank you. D-Rod79 says McMillan, Myers, Mims, or Zacchaeus in full PPR. As of right now, I would go with McMillan there, first and foremost. Yeah, that would be my preferred. Andrew Matheson says Zach Ertz or Johnny Smith, full PPR. I could justify playing Zach Ertz there in a full PPR. I don't have a thought in my mind in which there's a potential in which Johnny Smith absolutely blows him out in that category. So I don't mind the idea of playing Ertz there. Again, the two of them are split by such a short... Yeah, the distance between their two projections in my model is so limited that truly, if you wanted to play Zach Ertz there over Johnny Smith, I don't have an issue with it. Otherwise, if it was my team, I'm throwing Jonnu into the lineup. Failures, no option, says Michael Carter or Tracy in a half PPR. I prefer Tyron Tracy there. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Grabba says, do you think Josh Jacobs disappears again? I think Josh Jacobs disappears in the second half. Earlier this week, Josh Jacobs told the media that he doesn't expect himself to get a high volume of touches this weekend, primarily because they're playing against the Bears. The Bears, again, if they cannot score as an offense in the first half once again, as they're probably expected to be a pretty tough situation there, we're probably going to be in a situation in which Josh Jacobs, considering his efforts, will probably lead to a pretty significant lead. I'd assume that he disappears in the second half. Probably after the first drive of the second half, if they're up 3 scores, don't expect to see Josh Jacobs in the second half. But again, the offense is predicated on him getting the ball. So in order for him to claim that lead, he'll probably score somewhere between maybe 10 to 15 fantasy points on his path to claiming that 3-score lead against the Chicago Bears. Again, don't forget, without a doubt, the Green Bay Packers want to win that game so that they can play the Rams instead of the Washington Commanders play the Rams. But we'll see. Pranksters Nightmare sends in a super chat. Pranksters, thank you. Says Michael Pittman Jr., Juwan Jennings, or Marvin Mims. As it currently stands, if I was going to prefer one of the group, I would go with Juwan Jennings first and foremost. Again, Deebo Samuel earlier today designated out. It does elevate the idea of the potential of Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, and Ricky Pearsall, even without Brock Purdy there. Again, Joshua Dobbs has been a solidified quarterback. He presented it last season as a member of the Arizona Cardinals, as the Minnesota Vikings, and thus far this season obviously hasn't been given many of opportunities, but even in the absence of Purdy earlier this season, when Brandon Allen was the starting quarterback against the Green Bay Packers, George Kittle got his ample opportunity share. So I'd go with Jennings there. Number 1, I'd go Pittman 2, Marvin Mims 3. Thank you. Gary Shaw says, I'm a longtime subscriber. First comment. Really? How about that? It says, I have a slim chance of winning my full PPR championship, but I can decide on my flex between Michael Carter, Drake London, and George Pickens. If I was in your position, I'd probably end up playing Drake London there. The volume of success the wide receivers have found against the Carolina Panthers over the course of the last couple weeks, specifically if we're talking about someone like Mike Evans, who has a very similar kind of structure of build and kind of the 50-50 ball receiver of his respective offense, like Drake London. If we're going to be in a situation in which they're going to continue to give Drake London those opportunity shares in which he's gotten, again, the last 2 weeks, obviously back in week 16, only left early because of the hamstring injury he sustained. Otherwise, he was going to get himself a double-digit target share. I'd assume that Drake London is the preferred of the of the three options there in a full PPR circumstance. Thank you. Angel Montero says, how are we feeling about Wilson this week? But then again, St. Brown and Evans is safe play. How are we feeling about Wilson? We're talking about Garrett Wilson or Russell Wilson? If we're talking about Garrett Wilson, yeah, St. Brown and Evans are absolutely your plays without a doubt. Eyes closed. I mean, just don't even think about it, man. It's absolutely St. Brown and Evans. TT Warrior 1 says, cheap sleeper. Was this a Keaton Mitchell and Derrick Henry out of game by second quarter? Look, you know what's crazy? The current spread for that game, I think it's the biggest spread in NFL history in like the last 20 years. I don't know. The Ravens going into Saturday's game tomorrow afternoon, starting at I think 1:30 p.m. PST. Again, I'll be here at noon PST with updated rankings at all primary positions, top 36 running backs, wide receivers, top 16 quarterbacks, tight ends, top 12 kickers and defenses tomorrow morning from noon to kickoff of the Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. That game, I think the spread is 20.5. It's the largest spread that I've seen in forever. So yeah, expect it to be a blowout. Zach says Strange or Johnson at tight end this week. I prefer to play Johnson. Strange, his snap counts have dipped greatly, and his overall utilization within the offense has, obviously followed. Let's see here. Angel Montero says, you think Kittle plays this week? I mean, based on the fact that they designated Deebo Samuel out earlier today, and they did not do the same for George Kittle, leads me to believe that, yes, George Kittle will be playing this weekend. Let's see here. Lan is awesome says, I renamed my team to the Replacements. Also, I have no one in my lineup from the original roster. My triple stack of Hurts, Barkley, and Brown are on the bench along with Connor. Championship game, let's go. Yeah. Earlier today, somebody had commented on yesterday's live stream saying that like week 18 is for fantasy purists only. I don't see this as a purist, scenario, unfortunately. I think that if you have to strategize for your players missing because of the NFL playoffs impacting fantasy football, I think this is the worst possible scenario in which we talk about purism of fantasy football. This is just a crapshoot as to who's going to be starting their guys for an extended period of time. It really is a rough time. And again, hopefully your fantasy managers and, of course, your commissioners learn from the experience and hopefully in the future can go ahead and just make it a 17-week season for fantasy purposes, because really this is a tough situation for many of us. Maddie says Ertz or Pat this week. If we're talking about Pat Freiermuth, I'd rather just play Ertz at that point. Again, the rankings are currently on screen. I'd go in that direction. Rackup says need two wide receivers, Keenan Allen, JSN McMillan. I'd go with JSN and McMillan there. Panda Gaming says, I need a running back. Michael Carter, Ray Davis, or Gainwell. I'd go with Mike. Do I want to play Michael Carter there over Gainwell? Will Shipley's going to come back from concussion protocol. It could be a little bit of a split between the two of them. If I was in your position, I think I might end up just playing Michael Carter there because I know he's going to get himself the entire workload of opportunity. As for Ray Davis, again, he's still going to have Ty Johnson in the backfield. And additionally, we will see James Cook most likely in the first quarter, if not the first half of the game, until he gets replaced. As for Gainwell, I think they may use a lot of Will Shipley in that second half potentially. So I think Michael Carter might end up being the best play of the bunch. Failure's no option says, who has a chance of having a boom game, Kyler or Russell Wilson facing Joe Burrow? Look, I think the Cincinnati Bengals defense has played significantly better over the course of the last couple weeks. I think it will be a significantly different kind of experience in comparison to last time out for Russell Wilson, as the team scored 40 plus points. Obviously, a defensive touchdown was accompanied with that performance, but still, I think going into this week between the two of them, the boom performance, I think it's always going to be on the side of Kyler Murray because he has the potential of that rushing upside. I think if you're playing in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, then sure, I can justify Russell Wilson, but I think the rushing upside is always on, favors Kyler in that kind of a circumstance of looking for a boom. Let's see here. We took care of that question. We had a question from Paul Brown who says, follow up. I could play Jonnu Smith in my flex over OZ or Mims. Okay. Or I have Trey. Okay. Cause I have Trey McBride. Okay. At this point, would I suggest, would I rather play Jonnu Smith at the flex? I'm very much so considering it instead of playing Zacchaeus from Washington in the flex position. As of right now, considering you have Trey McBride, I don't mind the idea of playing both of the tight ends there. Andrew Ortega sends in a question, says, I need to start 2 out of these wide receivers, Judy, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen. I'd play Devontae Adams and probably Judy there. The volume of opportunity that Judy has been exposed to, the fact that both Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, and also David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, they're all designated out. It's just going to be a game in which, for the entirety of the contest, it will be DTR and Bailey Zappi throwing and probably looking in the direction of Judy. Again, he had 18 targets last week, not by accident, but by design. So Judy and Adams there. Walrus King says, I need 2 wide receivers. Who should I do? It says, I have Judy, Juwan Jennings, and McMillan. That one's an interesting one. If you're playing in like a full PPR, I could justify going Judy and Jennings. Otherwise, if it's a half PPR standard, I go with Jennings and McMillan. Gatling Gun says, just wanted to drop a line. Andrew says, I won a championship, and you're a big reason behind it. Keep up the great work, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and congratulations, Gatling Gun. I'm very glad to hear that you were able to bring in the championships. Says, good luck to everyone playing in Week 18. Thank you again. Appreciate that. Charles sends in a question, says, if Chase Brown is out, where does Khalil Herbert rank in a full PPR? Is he ahead of names like Michael Carter and Antonio Gibson? I would say yes. In the event in which the game time decision of Chase Brown, let's say, for example, tomorrow afternoon he was inactivated, I would play Khalil Herbert ahead of Michael Carter and Antonio Gibson. Yes, I would. Enemies Within says, hey, Andrew, I just wanted to say thank you for so much for all the fantasy advice over the years. I won my championship and 3rd in 2 other leagues. Congratulations on the championship. Hopefully next season we can make it 1st in all 3 of those. Congratulations, though, Enemies Within. Glad to hear it, my man. Shaboy Martin sends in a question, says, hey, Andrew, can you rank these running backs? Rico, Carter, Tracy, Herbert, Davis, and Hall. Yes, I can. Absolutely. So I'm going to just write these names down on a notepad just so I can organize them in front of my face so I can kind of structure it properly. So Herbert, again, only plays in the event of Chase Brown being out. So I'm going to assume, okay, I'm just going to rank it as such under the assumption that Chase Brown is out tomorrow, okay? Because you know not to play him in the event in which Chase Brown was to be active, okay? So as of it currently standing, I'd go Rico, I go Tracy, I go Hall, Herbert, Carter, Davis, okay? Top to bottom, Rico number 1, Tracy number 2, Breece Hall number 3, Khalil Herbert number 4, Michael Carter number 5, and Ray Davis number 6. Under the assumption, again, that we have Chase Brown out with injury. Otherwise, Herbert obviously is last on that list. Thank you. Okay, if Brown is out, Herbert, Tracy, or Garendo. Depends on format. If we're talking about like a full PPR, I just go Tracy there. If it was a half PPR, I'd go Garendo there. Dylan says, any underdog picks for Sunday's games? Yeah, absolutely. Let me go ahead and pull up my underdog account right now, and then I'll go ahead and share with you guys some of the picks that we've made over the course of this week and that I feel most confident about. Again, I've made a lot of picks, a lot of entries. Some of them I'm more confident about than others. So again, I will kind of detail that in specific, but we'll go over them one at a time here. Beginning with like the first, okay, so these are some of the off-season, look at these off-season entries I made, okay? Travis Etienne murdered me. So Laporta's probably going to end up killing me, and so is Stroud. I mean, these are some of the preseason ones, definitely not hitting for your boy. But anyway, in terms of regular season entries, okay, so really quickly, I made this entry. I don't know why, but I felt pretty confident in getting a 2x on the matter. Jerry Jeudy higher than 0.5 receiving yards in the first quarter. Now you may be wondering, Andrew, where did you even find that, and where does it even exist? Well, I'm more than happy to share that with you, okay? Just so that we're all aware, you can adjust lines on Underdog, okay? So if, in fact, you see a line in which you like, but you're like, I'm not sure, 100% sure if I want to go ahead and, like, take that. What is this, a no-sweat NBA only? Okay, never mind. Like, for example, in the case of Jeudy, like when I travel here to Jeudy, if you wanted to adjust the line for him, let's say you didn't like 5.5 receptions, you'd rather have it at 4.5 receptions. You click on this arrow and you can adjust it. You can take him at 4.5 receptions. So all he needs is higher than 4.5, and then you go ahead and you hit, which I think is actually not a bad number, honestly. But anyway, going back to my previous statement, higher than 0.5 receiving yards in the first quarter. He just needs 1 receiving yard in the first quarter, and Derrick Henry needs to have 1 touchdown within the game. I like that entry overall. Then we have Lamar Jackson, 1.5 passing touchdown. Same thing with Russell Wilson. I thought, again, if you're going to blow out the Cleveland Browns and you're a minus 20.5 point favorite, I'd assume that Lamar Jackson throwing 2 touchdowns is within the realm of possibility. And of course, Russell Wilson last time out against the Cincinnati defense threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I think 1.5 is definitely within the realm of possibility for himself, especially considering they're coming off of a 3-game slide. I don't see a Mike Tomlin team losing 4 in a row. I don't see it being the case. Then we have another one of these favorite plays. Again, the favorite play of the week as of right now is Mike Evans, okay? Mike Evans, again, is going on a generational run. Of course, he has already guaranteed himself a Hall of Fame jacket in the future, but he wants to go ahead and continue to etch himself into the, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, record books, per se, with a 11th consecutive season of 1,000 receiving yards. In order for him to accomplish that this season and tie Jerry Rice for the record of 11 consecutive seasons, he needs 1,000 receiving yards, and he needs 85 this weekend. So I would go ahead and take him at 79.5 higher. Again, like I talked about earlier, and I'll go ahead and share with it again, if you go and looked at Mike Evans right now, his number sits at 99.5. So you'd be thinking, well, Andrew, how'd you get it at that number? Again, if you click on the arrow, you can lower the number all the way down. Now, of course, 79.5 has been taken out, but 84.5 is sitting there, which again, he needs 85 to hit 1,000. The assumption is that they're going to do everything in their power in order to make sure that this happens, in order for him to continue his record. So again, I'd probably even go higher on this number as of right now. I take it with this. But anyway, continuing on. Other entries that we made, Bijan Robinson going for an anytime touchdown, and of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is the number one receiving option of the Seattle Seahawks offense, as Geno Smith is trying to claim his $5 million in incentives this weekend based on his stats, should be able to accomplish this. Of course, Bijan Robinson taking on Carolina. It is one of the best run-stop matchups in regards to potentially him succeeding. Then we continue on. DJ Moore, 4.5 receptions. That's pretty easy, again, based on his volume of opportunity share. Devontae Adams, Malik Neighbors continuing his stretch of success. Then we have this just singular game. Stafford and Goff both throwing. Sam Darnold and Goff throwing for 2 touchdowns each. St. Brown going higher on his receptions, and so is Justin Jefferson. Honestly, if I was in a position, well, probably what I'll go ahead and do later on, I think if you took higher on every single player in this game, I think you'd hit. Whether it's Laporta, Gibbs, Addison, it doesn't matter. Jameson Williams, I think everything going higher is probably going to take place within this game because it's going to be a shootout without a doubt. Then we have another extension of Evans here. Then we have a reception count for Jackson Smith and a receiving yard count for DK Metcalf. And then close it out, we have another Evans with Jackson Smith and Neighbors. Again, there are a couple players that you've seen on multiple occasions. Evans and Jackson Smith and Neighbors being ones that have on multiple different legs. So I guess technically based on volume, they are my favorite plays going into this weekend. We can go ahead and put together more entries in the future, but just wanted to share that to begin with. Again, for those of you who are joining us on this wonderful Friday, again, you could be anywhere else, but of course you are here because unfortunately you are playing in week 18. If you are not playing in week 18 and you are here anyway, again, your presence is greatly appreciated. Again, we'll continue to answer questions. If you guys have any, please do me a favor, type it in the live chat, include your scoring format. I'll be here answering questions for a couple more minutes here, and then of course we'll head out. I'll be back tomorrow around noon PST, an hour and a half before the games begin, to be answering questions in regards to starter sits. If you have any, be sure to swing on by, and of course we'll do the same thing on Sunday morning. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. Raka says week 18 is a tough week. Oh no, it's not even just a tough week. It is an impossible week because again, the organizations have a lot of information just close to the vest. They have no incentive to sharing a lot of the information as the players are going or not to the public. They have no incentive in doing so. Therefore, we should anticipate that they're not going to share much information with us. Earlier today, we got like a designation that Will Levis is starting. We also heard that Trey Lance is going to play a lot in the second half. These are things that are going to impact players like Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, the potential of Rico Dowdle or Brandon Cooks. The change of quarterbacks in these scenarios certainly going to play a factor. All right, Walter in the chat says JD or Baker Mayfield. Says, I want to go with JD, but is there concern that he will not play the whole game? Again, they need a win against the Cowboys in order for them to pull Jaden Daniels out. I think the question kind of remains, like, how many points do they need to be up in order for them to feel comfortable pulling him out? That really is just the question on hand. I would assume that they probably want 3 or 4 scores in order for them to get to 3 or 4 scores, considering the fact that Brian Robinson Jr. hasn't been the most impactful running back as of late. I would assume that a lot of the touchdowns would be, associated with either a passing or rushing touchdown from Jaden Daniels. If I was in your position, I'd probably lean towards playing JD because, again, he has that rushing upside in a 4-point per passing touchdown league, makes him a more solidified player. As for Baker, again, there's nothing wrong with playing him. I think he's a fantastic play as well. We talked about it yesterday. They're very closely ranked, but as of right now, I would still play JD there because, again, they have to win in order to make sure that they continue to claim the number 6 seed on the NFC so that they can play the Rams rather than fall to the 7th seed if the Packers were to win. And then, unfortunately, if that was to occur, they would have to take on the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs, which, of course, they don't want to do. Constantino says, what's up, Andrew? Tony is sketching me out being a game time decision. Correct. I agree. Says, if he sits Tracy or Downs in a PPR. In the event in which he sat, I would probably play Tracy there. As of right now, I want to play Josh Downs, but again, he left the, again, the lack of opportunity share last week was very much so concerning in my mind. I want to hope that he can make a bounce back performance, but I won't play him ahead of Tracy. So for right now, I go with Tracy in the event in which Tony Pollard was to miss. Yes, I agree with you. Him being a quote unquote game time decision is not a great look, especially considering, again, we know that Tyjae Spears is out with the concussion protocol. So if in fact we were to see Tony Pollard miss, it would be Julius Chestnut, which we would never even start. We would never go about putting him into our lineup in a Week 18 championship matchup. Bears fan sends in a question, says, I'm interested why Hawkinson's so low. I have him starting over Chigoziem Okonkwo, but have higher expectations of TJ Hawkinson, and also is ranking or regular or PPR. This is for a half PPR. It meets everyone in the middle, so whether you do play in a standard league or a full PPR league, I've kind of congregated the middle ranking of a half PPR. I wouldn't consider him to be low ranked at all. Again, a top 10 tight end ranking is solid. As to why I have him lower than guys like Zach Ertz, Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Johnny Smith, Mark Andrews, Laporta, Kittle, etc., it's primarily just touchdown upside. Unfortunately, the lack of touchdown utilization and the red zone looks that he has gotten over the course of the weeks in which he has been active as of late is the determining factor. In comparison to these alternative options, he has a lesser opportunity for that upside. Now, again, it should be a shootout. He has a revenge matchup against his former team, so I do anticipate him to have himself a little bit of a couple opportunities here and there to find success against his former team. But ultimately, it's a tough matchup against that team. Typically, over the course of the season, unless a tight end was able to score a touchdown against the Detroit Lions, not a single tight end has scored over 10 fantasy points in a half PPR without a touchdown in their scoreline. So basically off of receptions and yardage alone. So again, considering the touchdown upside isn't as associated with his overall utilization in comparison to guys like Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison, and of course, Naylor scored a touchdown last week, Justin Jefferson. Because of that, he falls lower than the alternative options available to us. D-Rod says, Russell Wilson or Flacco? Currently, I'm going to go, Russell, Geno, or Flacco. As it currently stands, based on yesterday's rankings, I can go ahead and continue to reiterate. As it currently stands, let me look at the rankings right now. Russell Wilson would be 1, Geno would be 2, and Flacco would be 3. That's the way that I'd go about it there. Gary Shaw says, thank you very much for your feedback. I'm from the UK, so I don't regularly get the opportunity to contribute to the live chats. Oh, okay, nice. But your advice is, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the kind words. Thank you, Gary. And of course, thank you for swinging on by today. Onage says, Garendo or Tracy PPR? In a full PPR, I'd probably go Tracy there. I could justify going Garendo. I just don't know how much receiving utilization he'll have, because typically, and this has been a pretty consistent factor over the years of fantasy football from my experience, unless the offense is predicated on dumping the ball off to their running backs, oftentimes if you have a mobile quarterback, which Josh Dobbs is, he's often going to look to scramble rather than check it down. So we may see a little bit less utilization from Garendo in that category. So I'd go with Tracy there as of right now in a full PPR. Caden, what's up? Says, with Lance playing, rank the defenses: Commanders, Texans, Seahawks. As of right now, well, look, Lance is going to play. As to how much he plays, that is a to be determined factor, because again, I would assume that the Cowboys are going to come out with Cooper Rush in the first half in order to see if they can win. If they're in a situation in which they could win that game, they're going to try to win in order to kind of play upset special against the Commanders and force them to have to play the Eagles. In the event in which, again, like we all anticipate, the Dallas Cowboys defense falls apart, their offense falls apart, we would anticipate Trey Lance to play in the second half. When that takes place, of those 3 defenses, let me go pull up my defensive rankings. I was working on it yesterday. As it currently stands, okay, so these are some of my top defenses going into the week. I have the Ravens 1, the Broncos 2, the Packers 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 4, the Chargers 5, the Commanders 6, and the Seahawks 7. So of the 3 that you mentioned, you had Commanders, you had Texans, you have Seahawks. So Commanders, Seahawks, Texans would be the order in which I would go about ranking them this week, Caden. Thank you. Mr. 1972 says, is Rudolph or Levis better for Chigoziem Okonkwo, although both will play? Rudolph is significantly better for the potential of Chigoziem Okonkwo. That is why I've moved him down to where he currently sits within the iteration of this rankings, because Will Levis is expected to start. So if Will Levis only plays, for example, the first half or maybe every other series, depending on how this game goes, I think it does limit the overall upside of Chigoziem Okonkwo, considering, again, with Rudolph, he sees himself a significantly higher target opportunity share per attempt rather than with Levis. Darren Hill says, yeah, the Commission 1 league had only 4 teams going to the playoffs, and instead of changing that, he also moved us to weeks 16 through 18. I'm so mad about it. Yeah, listen, usually if I was in your situation, Darren, you should probably just be the commissioner. You probably know more than that guy in regards to fantasy football. So you probably should go about, being like, hey, you know what? Let me just take it over, because you obviously don't even know how to structure the settings properly. But yeah, that's rough there. And I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see here. We had a question from Oni who says, Boswell, Reichard, or McManus. Considering Reichard plays indoors in what is expected to be the highest scoring matchup of the week, I'd go with Reichard there of the available. Bears fan says, thanks for the explanation on TJ Hawkinson. Do you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an interesting starter this week? Yes, I have him ranked within my top 36. As to how comfortable I feel playing him, again, the only reason I feel comfortable playing him in any circumstance is because of the receiving upside that he could theoretically contribute to the offense. I have him currently ranked at like RB 38 behind like guys like Miles Sanders, Carson Steele, Ty Johnson, Deontay Foreman. Again, I don't expect them to run the ball much, but again, he could have himself some receiving upside in the absence of Kendre Miller. Obviously, Clyde Edwards could definitely pose as a potential threat for that offense within the receiving game, certainly. Let's see here. We had a question from Gio Ortiz. Gio, what's up, man? It says PPR, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. Thielen, Pickens, Nico, McMillan, Michael Carter, or Corum, or Madison. Cool. Of the available, Thielen, Pickens, Nico, McMillan, Michael Carter, Corum, Madison. How do we want to go about this? If we're only playing 2 of these players, I'm not playing Nico Collins because he's only going to play the first half at most. I would rather probably play Michael Carter. Nope, not interested. Corum, no. Madison. Well, Madison could be a play considering Amir Abdullah was given the doubtful designation earlier this week. But if we're going to be in a situation in which the Steelers win on Saturday and the Chargers have nothing to play for, then sure, I'd be willing to play Madison in that game alongside of probably Thielen. In the event, well, look, considering you don't have an option because you have to play Pickens. Yeah, so if I was in your situation, you can either do one of 2 things. You either have to play Pickens on Saturday's game in hopes that he goes off, or you wait and you just play Thielen, McMillan, or Madison. If I was in your position, full PPR status, I'm okay going Pickens on Saturday and following it up with Thielen on Sunday as the wide receiver flex combo, Gio. I'm okay with that. If it's a full PPR, of course. Madison, again, because we don't know the results, he may have to face the starting defense of the Chargers, which makes him a little bit less of an appealing option. McMillan doesn't get as much receiving upside in terms of reception total count. So, again, it becomes a little bit of a sketchy situation there. So, Pickens and Thielen is probably the way that I go about it as of right now. Full PPR status. Thank you. All right. So, again, if you guys have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them today. Or, again, if we want to talk about them tomorrow, we certainly can. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon, again, at noon PST, an hour and a half before the Ravens take on the Cleveland Browns. I'll be here on the channel with up-to-date rankings on screen. Hopefully, if you guys, again, need any questions answered, you can swing on by around then. Otherwise, I can take care of your questions potentially on Sunday morning. I'd probably go live at like 8:30 a.m., like an hour and a half before the 10 a.m. slotted games begin. Brody probably finishes off the day with the final question. Says, PPR, do I play McLaurin or Flowers? Only reason I'm asking is because Washington doesn't have much to play for, while Ravens do. I would probably say that, okay, even though technically you have it half correct there, the Ravens have something to play for. They want to win their division with a victory. They'll clinch the division if they beat the Cleveland Browns. The only thing that I will say is that technically Washington, even though win or lose, they're making the playoffs, they want to win because they want to play against the Rams in round 1. Rather than if they were to lose, they would then at that point be playing against the Eagles, which again is a significantly tougher matchup with a healthy Jalen Hurts, which again, they only were able to beat them the most recent performance because of Jalen Hurts' concussion. So if I was in your position, I still think that as it currently stands, Washington has a lot to play for because they want to go ahead and have a higher seeding than the Packers, claim the number 6, play against the Rams, and try to go ahead and play upset special on the road to begin the playoffs. So I would play McLaurin there. 26 bands up says, which defense do we feel better about? The Broncos or the Packers? Currently, I have the Broncos 1 spot ahead of the Packers. That is the way that I currently have it. If you wanted to play the Packers ahead of the Broncos, I wouldn't even bat an eye because, again, Caleb Williams in that offense is a mess. The only difference is Caleb doesn't really turn over the ball in terms of interceptions. He's more of a fumble guy. Even then, he doesn't really turn over the ball much. So, ultimately, in comparison to the potential of Carson Wentz, we know what he's capable of against a starting defense without Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, a couple linemen out there for the Chiefs. Unless Carson Wentz was going for a legacy performance to earn a job next season, which, again, he certainly will be trying to do, I think it is probably just safer as of right now to go with the Broncos defense as of this week. Again, considering how great they have been for fantasy purposes all season long. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire a viable option this week? I think he's a viable option, but am I starting him over the top 30 running backs? No, I think he is a significantly lesser player in comparison to the rest going into the given week. Again, you have to understand that the Buccaneers are going to absolutely boat race and throttle them out of the building. They're going to completely pull apart that defense. And of course, as a defense, they'll probably be able to pull apart Rattler. Now, again, if Rattler is going to have himself a solid performance, similar in which he had earlier this season against that defense, then sure, we could see Clyde Edwards with some upside. But ultimately, I don't expect him to be more than like RB 30 by the end of the week when it's all said and done. Gio Ortiz says, where do you have defenses and kickers this week? Again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Again, I mentioned my top 6 defenses as of right now. I haven't gone ahead and put together the rest. Actually, I put together my top 7 defenses. Ravens, Broncos, Packers, Buccaneers, Chargers, Commanders, and Seahawks. Again, very contingent on the Steelers, whether or not they win and whether or not I play that Chargers defense on Sunday. But as it currently stands, they're there. I haven't worked on kickers yet because, again, I'm going to do that later tonight based on weather conditions and all that kind of jazz taken into association. I will have a, ranking by tomorrow afternoon, noon PST. I'll be live here on the channel. I think that'll be it in terms of questions answered. I do appreciate y'all coming through. Hopefully today's live stream, of course, with the remaining live streams of this week have helped. Again, if you guys want to go ahead and catch my rankings, they are, of course, available here on the channel via the live stream tab on the channel. Otherwise, you can always check out the Patreon or, of course, check out Underdog. There's a link down in the description to get my rankings for this upcoming Sunday available to you, sent from my email directly to yours. Again, I appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your Friday night. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cue the one and only Double Helix. And until tomorrow afternoon, hopefully I'll see you guys there. Until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.